Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are staying safe and healthy and enjoying your last few warm days in like summer. I mean, this is not summer, right? I'm sorry, it's fall. You're enjoying your last few warm days of fall. Welcome to another conversation. We are today here with another talented artist, Bright Unfried. Emmy, welcome to our conversation.
Thank you so much.
We don't have your video, Emmy.
You want it on now?
Yes, please.
Okay, because you asked me before to turn it off. There we go. Okay. Can you
How are you doing, Emmy?
I am doing very well. I'm fine. I'm very pleased to have been asked to have a conversation with you. It's really an honor, and I'm very happy to share my work with your viewers.
Thank you. It's we are honored, and we are so pleased to have you today in our show. Emmy, okay, so let's start. Please tell us about yourself, your background, who you are, how come you became an artist?
Well, my goodness. Well, when I was growing up in Massachusetts, I was, a creative kid. I was good in art, but it wasn't anything that anybody ever suggested to me as a career. And when I was in college, I also took some art courses and painting and drawing and so on. And I enjoyed those, but again, I didn't think that was going to be a path for my life. And my undergraduate and graduate degrees are in economics, so that was where I went for several years, but then we moved out of the country, moved to London, and our first two children were born there, and I was home with children, and I was making great Halloween costumes and needlepoint canvases that I painted myself, and murals in the playroom and so on. A lot of creative stuff, but again, when I was thinking when we came back to the States, I would go back into something that was not economics necessarily, but quantitative and respectable. And but when I started thinking, when my youngest child was near school age, I began thinking about what that path might be, and I really didn't want to do anything I could think of or anything that I'd ever done before. So I did some testing at an organization called Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation, and it was a life changer for me. So if you Google Johnson O'Connor, if you're interested in more about that organization, but they told me I had to do something three-dimensional, and I did start experimenting with three-dimensional things. I took courses in architecture and sculpture and theater design. I bought a little fixer-upper house and did that, did the fixing up. And it was fun, but it was hard to sell afterwards, and I didn't want to do that again either. And meanwhile, I was taking sculpture courses, and I eventually figured out that was what I should be doing because I loved it. And so that set me on that path, and that was over 35 years ago, I guess. And I have had a lot of variations in how I make sculpture over that period of time, different bodies of work, but consistently I like to make bronze sculpture.
So this is the type of art you most identify with, right? The bronze sculpture.
Well, bronze, I got started taking courses in bronze sculpture at Purchase College of SUNY. And there I learned how to make sculpture, how to cast bronze. And it was challenging and fun. And I was once told by somebody that I was a very process-oriented artist. And I think I didn't know exactly what he meant by that, but I am very interested in the process of how anybody makes whatever they make that I think is beautiful or interesting.
So why, in your website also you have a question, you said why bronze? So why bronze? What's the answer to that?
Well, there were three things that I cite on that page of the website. One is that it's timeless and classic and beautiful. Another, it's versatile. You can do all kinds of things with it. And it's very forgiving of casting flaws in most cases. And then the third thing is that it has very high tensile strength. And so you can make compositions that would not be possible in wood or stone or ceramic, because, you know, if you have something like there, that's a good example. The whole piece rests on the connection between the foot, the front part of the foot and the base, and it holds the whole figure, which is quite that's a pretty heavy piece. It's 22 inches high and the base is 10 inches square. So I can't remember how much it weighs, but on the order of 30 pounds. And most of that weight is resting on that little contact between the foot and the base, and it doesn't tip over, it doesn't break. That feature of bronze is something that I take advantage of in a lot of my work. I really enjoy that.
Would you mind share some of the process, how you start and how you create your object or your art object?
Well, when my early, I don't know, 15, 20 years, I made nearly all human figures. And that's, you know, the classical training is to study anatomy and of the human figure and concentrate on that the figurative genre, which is, it goes back to the Venus of Willendorf in however many thousand BC. The figure is extremely expressive, so you can do a lot with just figures, and I did that for quite a while. And when I modeled those in clay on an armature, supporting structure inside wire and wood and various things, and those are, if it's in clay and it's got an armature inside, it has to be, if you want to make a permanent thing, you pretty well have to make a mold that can come apart and create a wax replication of the original thing. And then the wax, it's called the lost wax process for this reason, that wax replication of the clay is encased in a kind of mold that can go into a furnace, and the wax melts out, it's lost, and then the mold is filled with melted bronze, and it goes everywhere where the wax was. And then there's more work to do on the metal, and the professionals at the foundry do that. But that's the basic way that the lost wax process functions. And what I have done since about 2000 is to bypass that stage with the original sculpture in clay, and just make the thing in wax myself. That's the beginning, and it's also the end. The wax sculpture is replaced by other materials like wood or like yarn or like cardboard that not in the case of the wood, but in the case of the the paper, cardboard, and the yarn, I immerse it in melted wax. And so the melted wax can burn out with whatever it's covering or soaked into, and retain the shape of that. And the, or I would sculpt things just directly in wax, if they're fish or birds or those, I just make.
You mean a smaller thing you directly cast on the wax?
Right. You can make some pretty big things though too. I have some sort of towers that they're narrow, but they're made of a whole bunch of things that stack on top of each other. They are, there's not a limit to the size really. I mean, yes, but that's technical. Let's not get into that.
How long it takes the whole process? I mean, this lost wax technique, it's something Asian, like Asian Egyptian were master of this technique. And this is something even today they use it the same technique. But how long the whole process for you takes to create something, for example, like this sculpture?
Well, that piece, that's started with wax, with clay, and clay over an armature. And it was a piece that I got the idea for when I was traveling in Spain, and I had been thinking for years that the Annunciation was an interesting subject and I'd like to do something with it sometime. And there was never, anyway, it took a long time for me to get to a point where I thought, okay, it's time. And seeing so many different kinds of Annunciation depicted in museums and churches and so on in Spain, I thought, okay, it's time. And I thought about what could I bring to this very much, very thoroughly examined subject. What could I bring that was fresh and original and modern? And by the time I got home from the trip, I had it all worked out in my mind, and it didn't take more than a couple of months at most for me to have it ready to go to the foundry. I had some concerns about the floating angel and on the two arms that are adjoining, that don't seem to be touching very much, but I was afraid that the weight of the angel would make the arms sag, and I consulted with my foundry about what we could do to make sure that would be, it wouldn't ruin the piece. Yeah. And so after talking with them, I took as much weight as I could out of the flames, or feathers or leaves or whatever people want to interpret them as. And I fattened up the wrists just a little bit, and they put a steel rod in between the elbows, and reinforced it, and it does not sag. And so that was a bit of a challenge. But when I took the piece, after say 2 months, I took the piece, I was ready to take the piece to the foundry. After maybe another 6 weeks, they had the mold and the waxes made from that. And then I went up and I checked the waxes, worked on them a little bit more, and then maybe another couple of months before it was that bronze was ready for me to inspect and supervise the patinas. So 6 months, right, more or less, from start to finish.
And what inspiring you, or who are your biggest influence for, like, such as like that one you said you went to Spain, and I'm sure you saw a lot of Annunciation, different painting. But beside that, what inspiring you to make your work?
Well, I think it's hard to say that there isn't, you know, any one artist that I think I'm trying to make my work follow in that tradition. I mean, it's the figures are in a classical tradition. The work that is like these trees, they are what I was talking about at the beginning or earlier, that I can cast directly from an actual little branch, model the bird to go in it, and model the base in clay, in wax. Actually it's a wax that functions like clay for the base. And then the branches, they were just branches that I found that there was only one of, and they could burn out in the furnace just as if they were wax. They would flow out when the wax was, and the ash.
Can I say like most inspiration of you, it's nature, or like, you know, what you see in environment, like for example, like, you know, because as I see, like, you know, you have a lot of nature, like, you know, birds.
That's right. I began making these trees when I moved to Wyoming, to Jackson Hole, where I live, and we're in nature. Our house is surrounded by trees and birds and other wildlife, and I wanted to pick up on that in my work, and so these the tree on the left has 5 different birds on the tree trunk that are local birds. Most of the things are local birds that I see all the time. I do a lot with ravens because there are a lot of them, and they're very nice birds. They're very smart. And then they were in the trees. The little birds were quite impressionistic, but they were definitely intended to remind you of a particular kind of bird. And then as I began the other things with yarn and cardboard, I still needed to everything had to have a bird. I thought often, does this piece really need a bird? And then, yeah, it's not complete if it doesn't have a bird. So, but they are not.
Bird is something you just have to use, like, you know, when you use not a figurative word, right?
Yeah, it's and they're not naturalistic. They're not meant to be any particular kind of bird, but they're just a shape that appealed to me, that I liked, that had harmony, that had an uplift, or sometimes conveyed a mood of some sort, or just sometimes they're just placeholders. They're just sitting there.
To talk about yarn, I saw, like, you know, you have some different series in your website. Also, I had few in PowerPoint, which I'm going to back. How you create this? What's the story behind this? Are you use actual yarn and, you know, you create this and then you put bronze on them? How you do that, and what's the story?
It's still the bronze casting part is all still done at the foundry, but what I'm taking up to them is something that is in wax. It's yarn that has been infused with wax. I have a here. You can't.
Okay, yeah. Okay, let me.
Okay, gonna show. Let me be on there. I just knit stuff. I'm like often when I'm watching a movie or something, I'm watching the movie, but I'm also doing something with my hands, and it's kind of stream of consciousness. And so, you know, there are different kinds of things that I make in yarn, and then I have an electric fry pan that I use for lots of kitchen tools here as heat sources. I have the fry pan, it's full of melted wax, and I just dip those things in it, let them sit in it long enough so that they get wax all the way through. And then And then maybe I form them into something like
Okay.
that, which is, has a firm, a solid form that, that the foundry can put a mold around. And it can be, you know, all sorts of shapes, and I like this very much, but actually this probably wouldn't cast very well because it's very thin. There are holes that are, you know, part of the that I think might, they said it's too fine, and the wax couldn't always be counted on to make its way all the way through the narrowest, finest parts of the mold, and so that is something I've learned to.
So if the yarn stay there, so this is the final one. Still yarn is there, right? The yarn is still there. What you?
Yeah, but then when they make a mold around it, it all melts out together. The cardboard and the wax, the yarn and the wax, the wood and the wax. It's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that was like, you know, I was wondering, like, you know, if you, you're making actual thing with yarn, and then you put wax, and then when the wax and thing all together melted, and the bronze there would be the last result of that.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily have an idea when I put the thing in wax, or when I made a Olivia strip there, which is just a flat strip that is twisted, given half a twist at one point, and the ends are connected. All of these use the same form, but they look a lot different because I've twisted them in different ways, or I've used different kinds of yarn, or I've combined them in different ways, by multiples in the same piece. Those pieces all sort of are outlines of figures, and different kinds of yarn again. Here they're all, even though there are a lot of twists that go on in each of those pieces, there's really only the one half twist. The other twists offset each other. So there's still just like the one in the middle, where you can see, if you follow the edge around, there's only one half twist. That it is also true of the others, where it's harder to follow the edge around because it's twisting this way and twisting back.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. I really enjoy watching this. But there is something. I'm gonna come back to this, and I'm just gonna go to your website. You have. I'm sorry. You have another series. You have also some realistic figures in your website. I guess I have to. Oops. It's kind of challenging to. You have some realistic figures in your website. Would you explain about those figures, and or do you have a model for that? Is it something you used to you create the figures for people who you know them?
Well, I have done portraits, and I have hired people I knew to model. Everything, almost with few exceptions, everything's done from a life model, in the classical way. And so I did those for 20 years, although after 2000 I was sort of not doing them unless there was a good reason, like a commission or a portrait. But I learned how to see the musculature through study, and I learned to represent it in an adequate way. Yeah. And I got tired of doing, well, I got tired of doing additions because, and that's one of the reasons why I really like the one of a kind direct cast bronze from yarn or wood or cardboard.
So this is something you're not really doing much. You more like, you know, realistic figures. It's not like, you know, something you're doing a lot. So this is.
No, I've done very few in the last 20 years because I've been focusing on the other bodies of work, the other styles of abstraction and the trees and these little boxes that
I mean, something also you mentioned in a review, actually, you mentioned about having a life size in public area.
Right.
Why that was important for you? I mean, I have one of them here in the beginning when we start talking. I play this. Why it was important for you to have something in public and life size?
Well, I think it's just a challenge and it's because it's in a public place, it's going to be seen more. And although I must say the little plaque on this and another piece that's in a public place in Jackson Hole, the signs that have my name on them are very small, and most people don't know that I made them, but that they're my work. They're always surprised. I just felt that it was sort of a step in the professional career that was a good thing to have. And I
kind of your signature, right? I mean, or like, you know, your signature, share it with public.
I suppose you could say that, yeah.
Yeah.
And this piece there in Young Man Reading, which is in the courtyard of the Center for the Arts here in Jackson, it has become kind of an icon, or it's a accepted, admired, loved local piece, and a lot of people have their pictures taken with it, sitting there on the bench. And
I can't tell why, because it's like you feel it's someone alive and sitting, and something like, everyone reading,
Yes, well,
so that's quite the reason. I'm sorry, I'm just scanning through because we are almost out of time. I just want to show a few more things of the work, and then get chance for everyone to see what other type of work you're doing.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we are at the end of our conversation. I mean, I know a lot to talk about, and then a lot of questions to ask, which is still there are so many things we need to discuss. But do you have any final word for our today guest, Amy?
Well,
anything you think important to share with them?
I just want to express my thanks to you and the National Association of Women Artists for having these and for giving me the opportunity to share my work in this way. And these are what I'm doing during the pandemic. Since I can't get to the foundry, I'm refinishing crummy pieces of old furniture and making them hopefully more beautiful.
So you painting as well. So it's not only 3D sculpture. So you do some sorts of painting.
Well, yes, but I'm not a painter. I'm just doing these for fun. But
it's okay. Like at least they are beautiful and really nice and meaningful as well. So I think that's the best thing we can all do. Create some source of art when we cannot go outside and do what we used to do always.
Is in that context, it's the little quote that I thought I might offer. It's from a Henry James novel, and the character speaking about art said, "We work in the dark, we do what we can, we give what we have." I like that.
True. That's true. That's really true, Amy. Thank you very much, Amy. We really appreciate and we really enjoy our conversation. And this concludes our today's conversation with you, Amy. If you have any questions, and you can reach out to Amy through her website. She has information in her website, beautiful artwork. I encourage you to go and see. There are a lot which we couldn't discuss and we didn't have time today. And you can contact her and ask questions and, see more of her artwork. If you have any question for us, as usual, you can reach out to us through this email, office@nova.org. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amy. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next in 2 weeks. See you another Friday with different and another talented artists. Thank you very much. Enjoy your Friday and enjoy your weekend. Bye.